I let a woman eat for free at my restaurant last night. It was the best decision I've ever made. When I was little, my grandparents raised me. My dad had taken off long before I was even born, and my mom, in an attempt to give me the best possible life financially, worked 2 jobs during the weekdays and one on the weekend. I never saw her, so naturally my grandparents stepped up to the plate. Although we had our own apartment, I spent most of my time at my grandparents' house. They were retired and lived modestly, feeding off their pension and investments, living in a modest 2-floor bungalow. They weren't rich by any means, but to a kid, this lifestyle was paradise. I loved staying with them and exploring all the nooks and crannies of their old house. I loved running around in the backyard in the summers as my grandma sprayed me with the hose. Most of all, though, I loved eating their home-cooked meals. Hands down, my grandmother made the best food I've ever tasted. She cooked slowly and with a lot of love, meticulously following recipes that had been handed down in our family for generations, but also not being afraid to add her own twist. Although there wasn't anything of hers I didn't like to eat, I went absolutely crazy for her pizza. My grandmother had Italian blood in her, and so her recipe for pizza was the real deal, passed down to her from her mother and her mother from her grandmother, all the way from the old country. The crust always ended up being thin, but somehow fluffy, melting your mouth delicious, with a fragrant, zesty sauce that never failed to get my mouth watering. The toppings didn't really matter much. As long as you nailed the dough and sauce, you nailed the pizza. Since it took so long to make and was so labor-intensive, she didn't make pizza too often, usually for special occasions, like my birthdays or when I got into college. She even made one for me when I got engaged, even though she was dealing with some pretty intense health issues back then. After my grandparents both passed, I decided I wanted to do something special to honor them. At that point, I was doing pretty well for myself. I had a stable job that paid okay, and I had gotten some solid inheritance money from their estate. So, to honor their memory, I decided to open my very own pizzeria. I named it Buchanan's, my grandparents' surname, but one I did not share, and committed to selling my grandmother's authentic, handmade pizza pies. And it did not do well. I don't know if it was the location or the cuisine, but this restaurant didn't even get off the ground before it crashed. I'd quit my job and sunk everything into this venture, with a contribution from both my mom and my husband. Plus, this wasn't just a business, it was my grandparents' memory we were talking about here. The fact that I couldn't muster more than 10 clients in a day was a huge heartbreak. One night, months after we opened, I was closing the shop early. We normally close at 10, but it was 9, and it had been a pretty brutal day. Usually we get a few orders for takeout and at least 4 or 5 people in the dining room. But tonight, not a single soul had meandered into the restaurant. So I decided to get a head start on closing up so I could at least get home before our son went to bed. I was just starting to get the dining room in order when I heard it. A soft, faint knocking at the window, punctuated by the squeaks of fingers against the clean glass. I peered outside, hoping it was a client, but nothing. No one. My eyes narrowed at the state of the evening, though. Outside was pitch black, weird for the neighborhood, which was usually illuminated by the white glow of streetlights, other businesses, porch lights, headlights, but tonight, nothing. That's when I also noticed that the air in my restaurant was, I don't know, weird? Compressed, I guess, hot and stale, like someone had vacuumed up all the air inside and left only enough for me to breathe. Chalking it up to just one of those nights, I continued what I was doing, lifting chairs to put them on tabletops so I could sweep and mop. Almost instantly, I heard it again. Louder this time, the unmistakable sound of someone knocking on the glass door. I looked again, but again, there was no one. Figuring it was a prank by some of the neighborhood kids, I huffed over to the door, annoyed, and pulled it open, ready to yell at them into the darkness like some crazed madwoman. But a woman stood in front of me instead. She looked normal. Well, normal enough. Tall, thin, almost gaunt. The skin under her eyes stretched paper thin and tinged an angry purple. The only thing unusual about her was the cameo pin she wore on her cardigan. It was small, but encrusted in shiny, dark jewels. It looked like she'd plucked it straight from the Titanic or something. For her part, she looked exhausted. I instantly felt bad for her, like I needed to be super nice. She reminded me of my mom, 15 years ago. Plus, maybe she wanted to buy some pizza. Plastering on a smile and putting on my best customer service voice, I said, "Can I help you?" The woman smiled, and when she did, her face seemed to light up. I felt both uneasy and relaxed at the same time. It was weird. "I'm sorry, it's been a long day, and I really need to use the washroom. May I please come in?" she asked, and motioned to the inside of the restaurant. I laughed. "Washrooms are for paying customers only," I joked, but moved out of the doorway so she could enter. Okay, so she didn't want a pizza, but I could still use some company, even if for a half minute as I guided her to the washroom. "Oh, all right. Well, I don't have any money on me, but..." "Mommy?" A little girl's voice squeaked from behind the woman, and I jumped, not having noticed her before. Peering deeper into the darkness, I could make out her silhouette. She had dark hair like her mother, pinned up into a cute bun on top of her head. "Mommy, can we go? It's cold." "Not yet, Annie. Mommy really needs to use the washroom." "But I'm really hungry." The woman whipped around to her daughter, and I got a clearer look at her face. She resembled the woman almost identically, except she didn't look like she was about to collapse from exhaustion at any minute. In her hair, she wore a barrette, decorated with the same jewel-encrusted cameo that her mother wore. "Annie," hissed the woman, "just wait outside for 10 minutes, okay? I'll be in and out." I instantly felt horrible for the little girl, and for the woman too. They reminded me of me and my mom. Or at least, how things could have been if not for my beloved grandparents. "Hey," I blurted, "why don't you both come in for some free pizza? It's warm in the restaurant and..." "No!" the woman exclaimed. "No, thank you. Annie is perfectly fine waiting outside, but that's very generous." "It's on the house," I repeated, my eyes pleading with the woman to come inside. I wasn't sure if it was pride or fear or what was leading her to reject my offer, but I wanted her to understand I wasn't judging. I sincerely wanted to help. I could think of no better way to honor my grandparents' memory. Plus, we were already going belly up. 2 or 3 free pizzas wasn't gonna change anything. The woman was silent. She seemed to be weighing her options. "Mommy?" Annie squeaked. With a huff, she grabbed her daughter's hand and dragged her past me, into the restaurant. "All right, but let's make this quick, okay? Mommy's hungry too, Marianne." The pair ended up staying 2 hours, tops. I fired up the oven and made, in total, 4 pies. All of them for Annie, who ate 2 of the pizzas with a passion and joy that I hadn't experienced since my own grandmother cooked for me. Her mother, Layla, took no food, insisting that she had plenty of things at home that would go to waste if she didn't consume them tonight. When Annie was finished eating, I boxed the remaining 2 pizzas and pushed them into Layla's arms. "For the rest of the week," I said, flashing her a smile. "They keep pretty well for lunches, just one less thing you have to do this week." Layla, who had remained mostly stony and silent throughout the meal, glanced from me, back to her daughter, back to me. She exhaled. "You know, I never let Annie come with me when... well, there are just some things I don't want her to see. It's a mother's job to protect their kids, right? No matter what cards life hands them." I narrowed my eyes. confused. Yeah, totally. I agree. Layla hesitated. Then she placed her free hand on Annie's shoulder. Thanks for feeding her, she said. We should be going now, just don't leave the restaurant open this late. This neighborhood is crawling with creeps. With a wave goodbye from Annie, the two took off. I continued closing up as usual, but because of the encounter, I was a couple of hours off schedule. By the time I locked up, it was a little past midnight, later than I'd have liked it to be, considering every single light in the neighborhood seemed to be broken. Plus, considering Layla's warning, I didn't want to be walking about in the pitch darkness in the dead of night here. Sure, it was only a 5-minute walk to where I'd parked my car, but a lot can happen in 5 minutes. Briskly, I locked the door behind me and began the trek to the car. It was a little difficult to see in front of me for how dense the darkness was, so I illuminated the path with the flashlight on my phone, and that's when I saw him. In the glow of my phone's flashlight, I made out the silhouette of a man just a few feet away from me. But he wasn't a human man. He was tall, taller than anyone I'd ever seen before. But his back was bent at an angle, twisted so that his wrinkled, elongated neck swooped down to eye level. When I saw this, I gasped, frozen in fear, unable to do anything but stare. His fingers were long and seemed to be bent and broken at strange parts. His face emaciated, with chunks of flesh peeling off his cheeks like stale wallpaper. His eyes were shut, but his mouth was curved into a satisfied grin. I couldn't do anything. I was physically incapable of moving, of screaming. I managed to pry my mouth open to let out a scream, but when I did, the thing opened his mouth as well, revealing several rows of razor-sharp teeth. Shocked, I let out a loud yell. That's when the creature lunged at me, his bones making a horrible scraping, grinding noise against the asphalt below him. I couldn't move my feet or my arms. My phone fell from my frozen hand, plunging the entire scene into darkness once more. I smelt the stench of ground bones. Resigned, I shut my eyes and waited for whatever painful death was waiting for me on the other side. But nothing came. I felt a rush of cold air envelope me, and then the sound stopped. The smell went away, and in an instant, I was able to move again. After a few minutes of regaining my breath and whatever was left of my sanity, I stretched my foot forward and felt my phone. Gingerly, I picked it up, not bothering to do anything else but absolutely book it to the general area where my car was parked. When I got home that night, my mind was absolutely on autopilot. It was like my brain was still too fragile to process the entire evening, so it sent all my thoughts away momentarily just so I wouldn't go completely nuts. Even though it was past 1 a.m., my husband had stayed up to wait for me, greeting me with a warm smile from his perch on the sofa as I walked through the door. Automatically, I sauntered into the living room, bending down to give him a kiss. "What's that?" he asked as I broke away from our quick peck. What's what?" "That, on your shirt. Looks new." My heart pounded. Had the creature marked me somehow? Was a piece of his flesh clinging to the wool on my sweater? Bile rose up in my throat as the memories of the night came flooding back. I looked down. Pinned into the fabric, right on my chest, was a cameo brooch, encrusted with blood-red jewels. Hey there, boils and ghouls. That was I Let a Woman Eat in My Restaurant for Free. It was the best decision I ever made by Reddit user Simple Chocolate. I will, of course, be providing the link to the original story in the description box down below, so if you enjoyed this story, then make sure that you go over there and send the writer your love. I do think that I want to be doing more of these little like storytelling times with you guys. So if you guys have any recommendations for stories that you'd like me to narrate, anything off of Reddit, creepypasta, your own personal stories, then let me know in the comments down below. Or you can contact me through email, Instagram, anything like that. All of those links will be in the description box down below as well. But for now, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to this channel for more horror scary content. Love you guys. See you next time.